Welcome to the Art of Living Free series with Anthony Silard. We would love your support to keep these valuable videos and podcasts free for everyone. To make a donation, please visit theartoflivingfree.org. 100% of all proceeds go to nonprofit education programs. Today, Dr. Silard explores, is your phone actually making you lonelier?
Hi, I'm Anthony Silard, and welcome to the Art of Living Free. Today we're going to explore, is your phone making you lonelier? Well, what do you mean? My phone's not making me lonelier. I'm connecting with so many people through my phone, right? Well, is that really true? If we're connecting with people this way and talking, it certainly could be. You know, studies by Leslie Seltzer and her team of psychologists at University of Wisconsin have found that phones can replicate in-person interactions pretty well in terms of the release of oxytocin, which is a sort of a neurochemical associated with human bonding. Also can decrease, the phones can result in a decrease of cortisol, which is a stress-related hormone, about very similarly to in-person interactions. But the problem is most of us are not using our phones as phones. We're using them for electronic communication, like texting, Instagram, Facebook, email, and so forth. So a study by Philip Hyland found that among over 1,800 adults in Ireland, that what makes people lonely is not the quantity of relationships, it's the quality. So the real question is, the quality of our interaction with others, is that improving or decaying with our phone use? And as Ryan Dwyer at the University of British Columbia has found, it's decaying rather than increasing. So actually, the more we engage in electronic communication through our phones or other devices, the less we actually enjoy face-to-face interaction. And so let's look at loneliness and how does that come about? Why is it that the less we interact with people in person, the lonelier we become? So think of it this way. Phone use means less. There's a displacement effect, which I talk about in this series and other episodes. So the more we use our phones, again, I talked before about a bowling ball, drop it in a bathtub, and boom, all the water that comes out, that's the time with family and friends that you don't engage in anymore because you're on your phone. So it displaces that time. So less time, so more phone time and device time, less time with family and friends through this displacement effect. And then how do we go from there to lower quality of interactions with others, which make us lonelier, as Philip Hyland's study shows? Well, engaging in social interactions is kind of like hitting a baseball or playing basketball. To do it well, you got to do it a lot. And the less we do it, the less we lose our practice at doing it. It's the same thing with social interaction. It's practice that doesn't make perfect, but improves those interactions a lot. So I've got a research I'm doing with Sarah Wright at University of Canterbury in New Zealand around the dysregulating effects of loneliness. So basically, the less we interact with others, if we desire more interaction than we're actually experiencing, we feel lonely. So that's important to think about. Not everyone that does not interact with others is lonely. So there are some people that actually don't want to interact that much with other people. And as long as their desire is equivalent to what they're experiencing, they're not feeling loneliness. Loneliness is when, so think about it, objective social isolation. Like if you live alone, you're objectively isolated. Okay, that's not necessarily loneliness. Loneliness is subjective social isolation. You consider yourself to be isolated. That's when you feel lonely. Why do you consider yourself to be isolated? Because your desire for social connection is less than your actual social connection. And this gap in between, you think about it, why, basically the mental script is, why are my social relationships less meaningful and robust than they are? I'd like to have more relationships with more friends, or I'd like to have an intimate partner. I'd like to have a closer relationship with my family members, and I don't. And this gap, the subjective social isolation creates the loneliness. Okay, so how do we go from, remember, we're talking about going from more phone time and device time means less, this displacement effect, less face-to-face interaction with others. Okay, that's that displacement effect, dropping the bowling ball, in the water that splashes out is your time with family and friends that is displaced because you're spending more time on your devices, okay? So then how do we go from less face-to-face time with others to lower quality relationships, which, based on Philip Hyland's research and others, leads to loneliness, because the lower the quality of our relationships, not the quantity, the lonelier we become. Well, first we have to understand that loneliness is subjective. It's an emotion, right? Not everyone feels loneliness when they experience social isolation. So some people are relatively isolated from others and they like it that way and they don't want to have more interaction, right? So for them, they experience objectively, they're isolated. So they experience objective isolation, objective social isolation. But they don't experience subjective social isolation. Objective social isolation, like if you're living alone, you're objectively isolated. You've been inside for 3 days, you've been isolated, right? Subjective social isolation is when you feel isolated, and that's what leads to loneliness. So, based on research I'm doing with Sarah Wright in the University of Canterbury in New Zealand, we find that loneliness tends to dysregulate us. So in other words, the lonelier we become, we tend to show up differently as human beings to others. We tend to care about others less, we give less to others, and we also, because we go to others not out of want, but out of need, like it's not like, oh, James, I really value you, your intrinsic qualities. I just enjoy the conversations we have together, and that's why I want to spend time with you. That's not what we do. It's like, James, I need to spend time with you because I'm lonely, right? And so what do we do when we're in that sort of frantic, loneliness-induced social state? What we do is we tend to dysregulate our emotions, meaning we either express too much emotion. Oh, James, that's so funny. And James is like, why are you trying so hard, Tony? Or we don't express enough emotion, right? So we regulate our emotions too much because we're nervous. Okay, I'm so glad to finally have time with James. I don't want to say something that's going to make him not want to see me again. So I'm just going to be kind of really quiet. And then James is like, well, Tony's kind of boring. I don't know if I want to hang out with him, right? Either way, we're either controlling our emotions insufficiently or too much. And so in other words, we don't have that sort of sweet spot, what Aristotle called the golden mean between opposing tensions, between like lots of emotion expression and insufficient emotion expression, right? So we need to find that middle ground. The sort of the pathway of the friendship is kind of like a natural progression as opposed to feeling really uncomfortable or awkward. So that's one of the ways that the less social interaction we have with others, the more lonely we become, and then actually what we do is like a vicious cycle. The more we have trouble regulating our emotions because we're feeling lonely. Remember, loneliness is an emotion. So we're feeling this emotion and it's causing other emotions like anxiety and insecurity. And loneliness, like depression and many other complex emotions, it's actually more than one emotion. It's got, within loneliness you can have angst and anxiety or depression or discontent, but loneliness as an emotion, it can make us harder for us to regulate our other emotions. And then what happens is, because we don't show up well in relationships, we either try too hard or we don't try hard enough based on our insecurities and loneliness. Well, what happens is we push others away. And then what happens? We become lonelier. That's the vicious cycle. Loneliness leads to emotion dysregulation, like not regulating our emotions well, leads to more loneliness. And it goes around and around and around. This is very, very important because this can lead to suicide, this can lead to self-harm, this can lead to drug use, it can lead to a lot of addictions. Addictions are always seeking fulfillment in something outside of us, whereas loneliness is also a sign that we're not fulfilling ourselves in the way we're going about our lives. So we're trying to seek it elsewhere from other people. So I would say, if you've been using your phone a lot or your devices and you've been feeling lonely, what can you do? All right. So I would say one thing you can do is, of course, try to use your phone less. Try to use it more to call people. So less for electronic communication, more to either call people or to send a text. saying, hey, it would be great to talk with you later. Can we talk later around 7:30 or 8, right? And let them text you back. Oh, I'm going to be at a dinner then. Can I call you when I get back at 9? So all of a sudden, hey, you have a phone call you're going to have at 9. Another strategy, and I would say this is the most important one, is when you feel lonely, take an inner detour. So remember, loneliness is subjective social isolation. It's your own perception that your social relationships are not as robust and meaningful as you would like them to be. Well, I hate to break it to you, but part of that is because of the way you're showing up to those relationships. It's because of the need you bring. Again, the need for receiving attention and recognition from others rather than the want to go and listen to others and be there for them. You know, I have a saying which is, I wanted a friend and there was no one. I was a friend and there was everyone. So if you want a friend, be a friend. Ask yourself, like, well, what does it take to be a good friend? How can I be more empathetic and get out of my own story and into the stories of others? What questions can I ask? How can I be curious about the lives of others? And that's going to make other people, or that's going to elicit that they want to open up to you more, right? So taking this inner detour, take some time on your own and really quality time. So it's quality and quantity time. So take time on your own more often, right? But also in a quality way. Go for a walk, meditate, do yoga, do whatever you do that helps you connect with yourself, and really ask yourself, like, how would I like my relationships to be? And just start developing your relationship with yourself. That's the basis of all of your other relationships. Our voice with ourselves, our voice with others, they're all one and the same, right? We internalize this voice. And so the more that you spend time alone and you go, you know, I really do have a good friend inside myself. I didn't really realize that. But I'm a good and worthy person and I enjoy being with myself. Then now, the next time you go and interact with someone, you're already feeling happy. And you have happiness to share. And others are going to see that. They're going to be attracted to that. And that's going to enable you to build higher quality social relationships. And then you will decrease your loneliness. So I think if you read my book, Screened In, The Art of Living Free in the Digital Age, there's a lot of strategies in there about how to reduce your time on your phone and your other devices. That's part of the battle. And the other part is that inner detour and just showing up differently and in a stronger, more compassionate and meaningful way in your social relationships.
Life offers us many challenges, and theartoflivingfree.org offers new ways of thinking so we can see these challenges from a new angle and overcome them. Whether it's Anthony Silard's free blog, video or podcast series, his book, Screened In, The Art of Living Free in the Digital Age, or personalized courses, theartoflivingfree.org will help you refine your life vision and then transform it into action. Find out more at theartoflivingfree.org.